Now, thank you for the opportunity to present to the South African Medical Association Conference. My name is Advocate Andy Mothibi. I'm the head of the Special Investigating Unit. If we can go to next slide. We thought it appropriate that we should start by informing the conference about the functions and powers of the Special Investigating Unit, which is SIU for short. The SIU was established in terms of the Special Investigating Units and Special Tribunals Act 74 of 1996 by proclamation number R118 of 2001. This SIU is a public entity that conducts investigations by a proclamation from the president. And once the investigation is complete, the report is submitted to the president. The major functions of SIU include investigating corruption, malpractice, and maladministration. We also institute civil proceedings. We do what we call referrals to the relevant prosecuting authority. So that happens when we pick up evidence pointing to criminal action. And we also refer matters for disciplinary action. And that happens when we pick up evidence that officials in a specific state institution are involved in wrongdoing. We also have, in terms of our legislation, the powers to subpoena, search and seize evidence, and question witnesses under oath. This only happens once a proclamation is issued. As I indicated, we also institute civil litigation to recover state funds lost by the state institutions, and also to prevent future losses. What is outside of the SIU mandate is that SIU does not arrest or prosecute offenders. As I indicated earlier on, where there's a need to prosecute, we refer those matters to NPA. Where there's a need to arrest, we work closely with the police, the Hawks. When we have done that in many instances where we are conducting search and seizure, and where there's a need to include the police, we do so. We do not have the authority to implement disciplinary action because that is the responsibility of the state institutions or the accounting authority and accounting officers. What we do is we provide them with the evidence and we support them with the evidence that we have. We also work closely with other relevant agencies where our powers fall short in order to ensure consequence management. Next. Right. We also thought it's important to just take the conference through what are the main outcomes that we reach when we do the investigations. So the outcomes are really meant to ensure that there's consequence management. The civil litigation part that you see on the left side of the slide is that when we investigate, for example, we investigate the procurement process and we find that the contract has been awarded irregularly, we are enjoined by law to institute civil proceedings so that we can recover the monies, or firstly to cancel the contract and then to recover the monies that have been lost by state institutions. We also use the civil litigation process to do what we call preservation orders. We preserve assets in the process of doing a civil litigation process. We also preserve and freeze bank accounts so that whenever the civil litigation is concluded, we should have monies that have been freezed that we can recover from. We also recover or freeze pensions for those state officials who resign in the face of wrongdoing. So one of the other consequence management is the disciplinary action of those officials that are involved in wrongdoing. That part, as I said, we refer to the state institutions, accounting authorities, and accounting officers to take action. The prosecution part is, as I said before, when we find evidence of criminal action, we refer it to the NPA for prosecution. And all of these processes, be it disciplinary action or prosecution, we follow that. We follow up to ensure that they are implemented. We also work closely with other regulators, such as SARS, Financial Intelligence Center, to ensure that there's collaboration. We work very closely with them. Where there's tax infractions, we refer to SARS so that those tax infractions can be attended to. Next. Right. With regard to the topic that we've been given to talk to, which is really the criminalization of medical or services or medical attention. I know that it's a wide concept, but we thought we would start off with some of the areas that we look at. We've done a whole lot of investigation in what is called medico-legal investigations. There we have found various infractions. We have investigated this in the Eastern Cape. We've investigated it in Gauteng. Now we are busy with a proclamation that will authorize us to investigate that across all provinces. On the investigations that we did in Eastern Cape and in Gauteng, we have found that there are various practitioners that are involved. And those practitioners, amongst others, include lawyers. And by lawyers, we refer to attorneys and advocates. We also found that there's also an involvement of medical practitioners, in particular the doctors. The observations that we have made from these investigations is that there were misrepresentations that were made. I'll come back to the kind of misrepresentations that were made. We found that there's a measure of collusion between the practitioners and some of the officials in the state departments. We found evidence of corruption. We found evidence that points to over-servicing by the medical practitioners. Next. Right, this slide really just indicates to you some of the focus areas that we looked at when we did the medical legal investigations. The one focus area was for us to investigate maladministration in connection with the affairs of the state attorney in relation to the legal services that were provided or procured by the Office of the State Attorney in the performance of its functions. And as you can see there, the Gauteng Department of Health and the Eastern Cape Department of Health in respect of claims based on medical negligence. So there's been quite a number of outcomes that we have reached. And based on the outcomes that we have reached, there's quite a number of cases that we have also opened up, criminal cases. As you can see on this slide, there's 4 cases totaling about 72 million that were heard on the 3rd of November of 2020. We're still following up on those matters to ensure that there are outcomes. The value of those matters, as I indicated, is about 72 million. In this case, the application was for an interim interdict not to pay the plaintiffs until the finalization of the rescission of the judgments in the 4 cases was dismissed. The SIU has applied for leave to appeal the judgment in those 4 cases. So when we went back and looked at the outcome, just to put you in context, there were judgments that were given, and those judgments would have resulted in some payments being made to the plaintiffs, and the plaintiffs being the people who were claiming the payouts. So once we have done the investigation, we found that there were fraudulent misrepresentations, and the SIU sought to reverse. The simple word for the rescission is to reverse the judgments, and that matter is still ongoing. It's the same on the next line. This involved about 70. These were in Mthatha High Court. As you can see, those are valued at about 131.5 million. It's the same set of facts where there has been judgment which SIU is seeking to reverse. And in that case, we will probably still follow up and ensure that those cases are rescinded, or the judgments are rescinded. Next. Right. The other cases really it's instances where on the 13th of September 2018, the Office of the Premier in Gauteng entered into a secondment with SIU to investigate all of these medical legal claims, and a total of 58 files are currently under investigation, and some of the outcomes to date include the following that we have put there. There's an attorney who is involved in a matter valued at about 3 million. Right. In this case, as you can see, I said I will come back to the misrepresentations. In this case, the plaintiff confirmed to SIU that she never submitted any claim against the department and never made any engagement with the state attorney. So you can see the kind of misrepresentation that we talk about. The next case, there's also an attorney involved. This valued at about 32.2 million. In this case, the plaintiff also informed us that she was not aware of the amount of money being claimed on her behalf and that the matter had been finalized. The next one, again, is an attorney. This valued about 7 million. In this case, the plaintiff confirmed that the child never suffered from any fracture, injury during the birth, which was alleged. And the next case is an attorney again, 21.5 million. The plaintiff in this case was aware of the claim of 1 million, but not an amount of 21.5 million. So you can see the kind of misrepresentations that we're dealing with. And in all of these matters, we found that there's collusion, the collusion between the lawyers and some of the practitioners. Next. Right. In this case, really, we're not going to repeat what we have said above. This was in the Eastern Cape. So in this case, there's a number of criminal cases that we opened up. 8 criminal cases of fraud to the value of 115 million, and the 3 inquiries. Inquiries means that the matter was reported to the police, but the docket has not been opened yet. So they're still doing some of the investigations, hence they call it an inquiry. Those other matters are valued at about 79 million. And then there's also been a 3 notice of withdrawal of actions and settlement release. These notices of withdrawal are sent by the lawyers. So we have really realized that once we started with the investigations and the lawyers became aware that we are investigating and we are finding irregularities, they start filing these notices of withdrawal, not going forward with the actions anymore. Next. Right, we are now going to really go into some of the investigations that we did in various state institutions. We've conducted investigations in the Health Professions Council of South Africa, Council for Medical Schemes, National Health Laboratories, Free State Department of Health, Northwest Department of Health, and South African Health Product Regulatory Authority. And the last proclamation there, 23 of 2020, relates to the PPE investigations. Next slide. Right, next. Right, we start off with the investigations in the Health Professionals Councils of South Africa. In this case, we had to investigate and review compliance with prescripts in respect of the registration of medical practitioners, identify irregular, unlawful conduct on the part of the officials or employees or other officials, collect unlawful admissible evidence to institute appropriate remedial actions. We also provide recommendations on improvements relating to the systems at the HPCSA. Next. Right, so far we've really completed all the complaints investigations reported to the SIU. We've completed 8 corruption matters. We've also completed investigations into the health professionals unlawfully registered. As you can see, about 683 registrations investigated and completed that were focused on whether they were registered unlawfully. We've also completed 53 lifestyle investigations, commenced with investigations into alleged fraudulent board examination process of foreign qualified health professionals. Next. Right, to date, we don't really go into details with the outcomes, just to ensure that there's no legal risk. We don't even mention the names, but just for you, for the information, we have completed from the complainants investigations. 4 disciplinary referrals were made. Remember the slide that I showed you about the outcomes? This is where you can see it in action now. We've referred disciplinary actions of about 4 officials at the HPCSA, and from the corruption and lifestyle investigations, we have made 19 disciplinary referrals related to corruption. We have also made 22 criminal referrals based on corruption, including companies and officials at HPCSA. We've also made various recommendations for HPCSA to improve its systems. Now, there's a amount there of about 637,000, which was referred for recovery to KZN Department of Health related to unregistered doctor employed. So this is part of the examples where you realize that there's medical practitioners who are involved in all of this, unlawful activities. And when we find them, we ensure that there's action taken to ensure that they're removed from the system. Next. Right, at the Medical Council for Medical Scheme, we conducted quite a number of investigations after the allegations were sent to, reported to SIU. We did lifestyle investigations. We've completed up to now 4 matters, and these 4 matters would refer to about 4 people, and at quite senior levels. We are busy with medical scheme regulatory reviews, and these reviews would involve various medical schemes. At this stage, we of course cannot go into details, but these are some of the investigations we do. We also investigate curatorship appointments. We also investigate independent inspector appointments. There's also various complaints that are sent to SIU that we investigate. Next. Right. At the Council for Medical Scheme, we've so far made one disciplinary action referral. There's quite a number that we'll be following. We've also made recommendations for systems improvements. Next. At the National Health Laboratory Services, we also were investigating the procurement process and whether the National Health Laboratory Services received value for money, non-performance by contractors, lifestyle audits, and corruption. Because more often where there's procurement irregularities, we find that there's a collusion between internal staff and the service providers. So this one was really mainly procurement investigation. We haven't picked up any involvement of medical practitioners, but because it's in the health space, we thought we would also include it in this presentation. Next slide. Right. At this stage, we found quite a number of irregularities, which I will not go into detail on. As you can see, and it was made public, this one, that we succeeded in freezing the pension of the former CEO of the National Health Laboratory. And then we've referred about 3 companies to SARS. We have actually completed this investigation with quite a number of outcomes. Next. Right. There's also quite a number of referrals, which I will really not go into details on because they're really not quite relevant to the topic of the day. But it's just important for the audience to see that we reach quite a number of outcomes in all of these investigations. So we also have made systemic recommendations. Next. Right. Now, this is one of the other relevant investigations to the topic, and it's in the Free State Department of Health. On this one, we're investigating overtime claims submitted by medical practitioners in the employment of the Free State Department of Health, undisclosed or unauthorized interest that medical practitioners in the employment of the Free State Department may have had with regard to contractors, remunerative work performed by employees, including the doctors, outside the scope of their employment, the department's failure to verify the qualifications, experience, competencies of foreign medical practitioners, irregular claims submitted by medical aid companies. Next. Right. This slide really just shows the progress to date. The third bullet point just indicates that evidence pointing to misconduct by medical practitioners in respect of conflict of interest has been uncovered. So we make disciplinary referrals, and of course we refer to the Health Practitioners Council of South Africa so that these doctors can be disciplined, but we also refer them internally to the department. So this is one of the areas where you would find that this to a large extent really ensures that there's no conflict of interest between the doctors serving the department. We know that many doctors do this, but it is so important. This is admissible. It's allowed, but our call is that it must be done in accordance with the policies and procedures. It's the so-called RWAPs. It must be done with permission, right? It shouldn't be a remunerative work outside office hours without permission. It's got to be with permission, and there's a process that you follow to get the permission. The fourth bullet point, you can see that we found evidence pointing to criminal conduct, which has been uncovered. And as I said earlier on, we refer those to National Prosecuting Authority, right? Next slide. Right, still at the Department of Health in the Free State, and this one really, of course, there's irregularities here, but this was more a procurement investigation, and I will not spend a lot of time on it. It was to investigate the procurement of medical services. If you can go to the next slide. Right, so in this case, as I said, the progress really is to indicate that various irregularities pertaining to this procurement of patient services and medical services has been uncovered, and we will ensure that there's consequence management in this space. Next slide. Right, in Northwest, again, it was the procurement of patient transport services. Again, just overall, this is the procurement process where, in this case, doesn't involve medical practitioners who would have made themselves guilty of any offense here. It's the department not following processes in procuring the patient transport services. Next slide. Right, I won't go again into this into the outcomes, but we are still investigating to ensure that we come up with the findings. To date, some of the feedback that I've received from the investigating team is that they found irregularities, as you can see there on the third bullet point, that based on the allegations that there were inflated prices. So the investigation would still make sure that those are really verified. It's a lengthy process to verify all of the claims that the service provider provided. Next. Right, again, I did say, because this is really mainly procurement, I won't spend a lot of time on this, except to say that we want to make sure that any irregularities that are found are addressed, and all those who are responsible are held to account. Next. This is still the Department of Health. As I said, we'll identify officials that are involved, and we've brought an urgent interdict to freeze the former head of the department's pension. And at this stage, there's a processes that are ongoing at court to ensure that the legal process is followed. Next. Right, there's some investigation that we did at SAPRA, and here the focus areas were really around unregistered medicines or medical devices, including in vitro diagnostic medical services. We also looked at the licensing in terms of the regulations and the laws that are applicable. And we also looked at the improper conduct of SAPRA employees. Next. Right, there's some outcomes that we have reached. We found some irregularities, which we have addressed with SAPRA, and we expect them to take action. We've also made some systemic recommendations where the systems can be improved. Next. Right, as you can see, these are some of the outcomes. We've made at SAPRA about 2 disciplinary referrals. We've made criminal referrals about 2. There's a possible recovery that we will take through to the special tribunal to the value of 1.9 million. And the recommendations to improve the system would vary about 4 business processes. So there's also some of the legislative reforms that we have identified and shared with SAPRA. Next. Right, and now the next slide really deals with the investigations that we've done in the PPE space. On this one, without going into detail on the focus areas and the scope of the proclamation, it really suffices to say that we looked at the irregularities in the procurement of PPE, contracting of goods, works, and services, including the construction that was done for purposes of COVID-19 relief. Some of the construction of the hospital in the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure, that investigation is ongoing. Next. Right, this is still some of the scope of the proclamation, which I'll not go into detail, but we do look at whether there were fraudulent processes or any improper or unlawful conduct by the employees of state. Next. Right, this slide really just indicates to you some of all the provinces where we are investigating at. And as you can see there, that in terms of values, in KZN, we're investigating matters that we have finalized to the value of 2 billion. And in Gauteng, we've finalized matters to the value of about 505 million. And in the Eastern Cape, we've finalized about 1.2 billion. Next. Right, there's still matters that are ongoing. That slide really indicates where matters are still ongoing. We're aiming to really wrap up this investigation come the end of this month, the end of August. Of course, we still continue to receive new allegations up to now. And we are saying by the nature of an investigating unit that we cannot close out those new allegations. We continue to investigate them. But as you can see, it's quite mammoth. There's a lot of investigations that we did. Next. Right, I really won't go into all of these observations because this is really where you can see the kind of irregularities in the interest of time. As you can see, our findings, amongst others, is that certain service providers were already in the deregistration process when they quoted to be awarded the contracts, right? The type of goods that were supplied were not consistent with the nature of the business registered by that company, right? They should really not have been requested to quote for the PPEs. Product specifications were ignored, and products that were not suitable for its intended purposes were purchased in several instances. Certain companies did not qualify in terms of the BBB points. Many companies were awarded contracts for the supply of PPE, which included certain items that qualified as medical devices in circumstances where such companies did not have the necessary licenses from SAPRA. We have found that there's been political pressure in terms of the procurement of PPEs, and it appears that the names of the service providers were really determined before some of the SCM processes were followed, and the delivery of substandard and substandard products that does not comply with the technical specifications. So as you can see, we're finding a whole lot of irregularities. Next. Right, we continue with the observations. So we found that there were no attempts to negotiate with suppliers, which is really expected from SCM or supply chain management departments. Certain state institutions lacked basic control measures that will establish whether product delivery has happened. There appears to be no verification protocols on supplier registration details. suppliers using front companies to obtain multiple contracts from departments, cover quoting we found that is also prevalent. There's also splitting of bids to meet the quotation or delegation threshold. There has been misrepresentation from suppliers by not disclosing their close friendships with officials who were involved in the PPE contracts. The PPE were packed under false or forged labels. Witnesses provided false information to the SIU. Some staff in the state institutions appear to have taken responsibility for the irregularities to the PPE procurement instead of senior management or executive authorities. In this regard, we have made sure that there's accountability at all levels. It doesn't matter at what level you are, from an official, executive officers to the executive authority. Next. Right, I was told that I've got 45 minutes. I'm almost at the end. I think I'm on the 40th minute now. So these are really some of the numbers or some of the figures that we are showing you, that as at the fifth progress report that we submitted to the president in June, as at that time, because the next one is now due in August, we have not included the latest figures because they must still be presented to the president. But just to really give you a sense, as at June, we were investigating a total value of irregular contracts to the value of 14.8 billion, right? And up at that time in June, we had finalized about 47% of our investigations, and ongoing was 48%, and still to commence was about 5%. Next. Right. We do clearly indicate in those investigations that have been finalized with irregularities and with no irregularities. The ones where we have found no irregularities to the tune of about 3.9 billion, and where we have found irregularities, about 3 billion. So and then the total of those, as you can see, there's about 6.9 billion. So there's quite a number of irregularities that have been found, and we are continuing to ensure that there's consequence management. Next. Right. These are some of the outcomes that we have taken. And as if you recall, the first slide that I started with was about the outcomes. And you'll see that these outcomes are really aligned with the outcomes that we seek to reach. Up to now, in this PPE investigations, the number of matters that we have referred to the special tribunal, and this shows as at the end of May 2021, is about 22. Value of matters enrolled at the special tribunal, the value thereof, about 1.8 billion. We've made quite a number of disciplinary actions. Those are about 128. The number of referrals to the prosecuting authority where a crime has been committed is 148. Now, the number of executive action, just for information, could include the political heads of the departments concerned. Number of referrals for administrative action. In this case, mainly we do the so-called blacklisting of the service providers that have been involved. And we also have some of the outcomes in terms of the cash that is potentially recoverable. In this case is where we would have identified that the contract is irregular, but the money has not been paid yet. We advise the state institution not to pay. And in that case, we save that. But also those matters where monies have been freezed, those monies are potentially recoverable until the legal process is followed. And now the actual recoveries as at that time, as at the end of May, in the report that was submitted in June, was about 31 million. as we sit up to now, in the report that's going now in August, we will be showing an amount of about 148 million actual recoveries, and still going on. The cases in the special tribunal have skyrocketed. As we sit today, we've got more than 40 cases now, but we will be going public at some point through the parliamentary presentations or just releasing our reports to the public. Contracts that has been set aside through the special tribunal would be about 170 million. There's a line that says value of potential loss prevented. That's where the payments were stopped before they were paid out. Next. Right, I think exactly on time. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. It's been really a pleasure to present to this audience. But as you can see, that for purposes of this conference, as part of our investigations, we are finding a whole lot of irregularities in the health space. And just for information that we did not include here, is that we have since established the Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum. And that forum includes quite a number of stakeholders. And if South African Medical Association is not part of that forum, we would extend an invitation to SAMA that you become part of that, because all of these irregularities, all of these matters that you have presented to you now are all also followed up and monitored by the Health Sector Anti-Corruption Forum. And by doing that, we believe that as a collective and as stakeholders in the health sector, we will work together to ensure that we stamp out maladministration, malpractice, corruption, and just general crime in the health sector. Thank you very much.